Welcome to Vitality Unlocked. I'm Dan Garner, scientist, performance coach, and Chief Innovation Officer of Vitality Blueprint. This show does one thing: convert cutting-edge science into practical strategies for high-performance health. Each episode, we take one target and run it through a simple filter. Topic, mechanisms, current state of the evidence, and your next game plan. No fluff, no gimmicks. Hey there, and welcome to episode 2 of Vitality Unlocked. I am Dan Garner, and in this episode, we are going to be doing a deep dive into micronutrients and how critical they are, no matter what your goal is, but with the overarching theme that nutrition is not a belief system. This is something myself and other evidence-based practitioners have been saying for years, but even in modern times, certain ideas that are purely hype gain a lot of momentum from a lot of people, and they end up making the industry look very cyclical. We move from one thing to the next, one thing to the next, and it ends up just being cyclical instead of everybody just sitting down and saying, okay, how does human metabolism operate? Because that is the only thing that's overarching between all of this cyclical nature in the health and performance industry. Human metabolism has known pathways that are going to operate no matter what you believe. If I believe in my whole heart and soul that I have McDonald's and alcohol tonight, that it will be good for me, my body will strongly disagree. Okay, there are known metabolisms and known outputs that happen in response to inputs, and you're not going to change them based on how persuasive somebody's copywriting is. And it usually begins locally and not globally, meaning in every single city, there is the guy who begins to get momentum. And what do I mean by the guy? Well, there's either the paleo guy or the fasting guy or the vegan guy or the Mediterranean guy or the bodybuilding guy or whatever it's going to be. There is a guy that represents a singular way of eating, and that guy applies that singular way of eating to 100% of his clients. And you know what? It's probably going to work for about 50% of them. And then the other 50%, it simply will not work. But you know what he's going to do? He's not going to blame the ideology that's currently making him a lot of money. Instead, he's going to say those people probably didn't follow it. They didn't follow it. They weren't actually disciplined. They didn't follow the tenets of cavemen from thousands of years ago. Like, none of these things apply to human metabolism in the way that we know it today. So the movement that I would rather create is to remove the guys and have everybody understand, or at least respect, human metabolism at a fundamental level, and have that moving forward, because there's so much that we already know, there's so much that we already understand, and many of it actually works its way down to the cellular level in response to the micronutrient status of the body. I am not going to prioritize importance, one thing over the other. We will be discussing all of these things over the course of the Vitality Unlocked episodes, but one thing that I do think is very, very under-discussed and underrated is actually the micronutrient status of the body. Many people talk about calories and many people talk about macronutrients, and there's a really good reason for that. There are the laws of thermodynamics that you cannot break. They aren't my laws. They are the laws of physics. If you only do calories and macronutrients correctly and you don't do anything else correctly, you're going to go a long, long way. You will be able to achieve a lot of things. However, to claim that that is the extent of one's journey, which I see a lot of, is absolutely incorrect. That is not even close. And in fact, micronutrients in some cases actually have a huge level of importance to one's calorie and one's macronutrient input. And we're going to be able to talk about that, and I'm going to go through a lot of examples in this. But the promise that I'm going to make to you today, right here at the front, I want to talk about how micronutrients improve VO2 max, improve body composition, improve sleep, cognition, and energy. And then I'm going to give you the strategies and recommendations how to actually fix the gaps. It's a lot more than just take a multivitamin, okay? Is that a good recommendation? Yeah. You get a full spectrum thing of a lot of vitamins and a lot of minerals that can help fill in the gaps in a lot of ways. Sure, that's great. I also think that's a pretty lazy, recommendation. I think there are many other things that are also currently under discussed in that will aid one's ability to have a good, excellent micronutrient status within their body. And it come in the form of a food first approach and supplement second approach. Neither one is better, but there are some actual advantages from having nutrient dense foods. And we will be going through a lot of that. Okay. A quote that is actually from myself that I actually began many years ago is this: calories determine your body weight, macronutrients determine what you look like at that body weight, and micronutrients determine how you feel at that body weight. Okay? Think about that and write that down and don't ever forget it. Calories determine your body weight, macronutrients determine what you look like at that body weight, and micronutrients determine how you feel at that body weight. What does this mean? Well, if you take two people of identical body types in identical scenarios and you give them both the exact same caloric intake, they're going to be the same weight. They're going to be the same weight because energy in equals energy out. These are the laws of thermodynamics. Those people are going to be a similar weight. However, when you alter the macronutrient composition of that diet, the way in which those physiques present themselves are going to be very different. For example, if you gave two people of identical body weights and identical circumstances, 2,000 calories, they're likely going to be the exact same weight. But if you give one person pure sugar and then next person an equal distribution of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, the body composition of that individual and between one another, they are going to be very, very different. To go one step further, the micronutrient density of one's diet is going to determine how they actually experience life. And in many cases, those are the goals that I get as a coach. I don't always get, I want to be 130 pounds. I want to be 200 pounds. I want to be this jean size. Like, do those trickle through? Yeah, but they usually trickle through as secondary goals. They are usually secondary to, I want more daily energy. I want to be able to sleep better. I want to be able to better manage stress. I want to be able to reduce my bloating and indigestion after meals. The way in which somebody subjectively experiences life comes down to a feeling. And that feeling comes down to micronutrients and micronutrients' ability to catalyze enzymes and actually allow efficient use of the energy and macronutrients that you're taking in. You need B6 to convert tryptophan into melatonin so that you can sleep well. You need B6 also to convert tryptophan into serotonin so that you can sleep well. There are many, many examples that we're going to go through that actually change an entire physiology, and you don't have to take my opinion for it. This is going to be a presentation that is littered with tons and tons of scientific research that I really encourage you to go read yourself, okay? Calories determine your body weight, macronutrients determine what you look like at that body weight, and micronutrients determine your subjective experience of life. Is it full of vitality, or are you just counting calories and macros? Okay? Basic nutrition. I'm not going to go deep into the weeds on a lot of this stuff because, frankly, it's available pretty much everywhere. But when you look at it in a basic perspective, when you are looking at a diet, you have calories, macronutrients, and micronutrients. Calories are a unit of energy, not a unit of mass. Macronutrients are substrates. So these are the substrates that come in the form of the energy of the calories that you take in that are going to have different outputs in the body because they are different inputs. They utilize different digestive juices to break down. They're stored in different areas of the body. They are raw materials for different things. For example, anaerobic activity, or they may be a raw material for a hormone production, whatever it's going to be. Substrates come in the form of macronutrients, what are more basically called. And then micronutrients are your signals. These are the signals that either turn the dial up on those substrates or turn the dial down on those substrates. For example, we utilize fats as a substrate to make hormones. If we have a zero fat diet, then we are going to be starved of the raw material in order to make hormones. However, if we have a very fat-rich diet, but we are deficient in zinc. Well, zinc is a rate-limiting step to make hormones such as testosterone and thyroid. So even though you have a lot of raw material and substrates to give the body what it needs to produce the things that help it experience a high quality of life, you don't have the zinc to actually put those substrates to use. Okay? That is a signal. That signal is kind of like a knob that you either turn up or turn down based on how nutrient dense your diet is. Calories. This is where a lot of people start, and unfortunately, this is where a lot of people end. There is still a giant populace that says, all I have to do is eat less calories. You guys, you probably don't believe me because you are following me, okay? If you're following me, God bless you. You're willing to listen to me for 30 to 60 minutes. I am a lunatic, okay? So first of all, God bless you for hanging out with me for this long because I'm a crazy person. But since you are somebody who is drawn to my type of content, you might think, nah, Dan, everybody out there, they're not just following a calorie-only approach. There's no way. Look, there's people that follow a no-calorie approach. There's people that just eat a specific food because it's called the soup diet, or it's called just the only egg diet. Like, these things exist, you guys. They are out there. Look at it, okay? And when it comes to calories, there's absolutely people that just crash diet on calories. This 100% exists. Probably not in this community, but it is out there, and it's why so many people fail all the time. And it's of no giant mystery why they fail in a lot of cases. And you can just look right in the literature. All right, let's just start to dive into it. This was a great paper from Vink in 2016. And what you're basically looking at here, it's kind of weird to look at because this is percentage of fat-free mass loss. Okay, so how much fat-free mass did they lose? Usually you would see like percentage of fat-free mass, and it would you would be a higher reading, and then if they lost, you would see the lower reading. But in this case, the higher reading is actually the bad thing because you're measuring how much fat-free mass they lost. So what you're looking at here is a very low-calorie diet, which was actually 500 calories only. And then you're also just looking at a low-calorie diet, which was 1,250 calories. And you can see over the course of the diet, the crash dieters only dieted for 5 weeks, whereas the more balanced dieters at 1250, still pretty low, but more balanced than 500, they actually ran that out for 12 weeks. And you can see the difference here. They lost a tremendous amount of muscle. Both groups lost muscle, but the group on only 500 calories per day lost a tremendous amount of muscle by the end of their weight loss period. But then by the end of what was considered DI, stands for dietary intervention, by the end of the dietary intervention, they were actually both told, okay, after your 5-week weight loss period, you're going to do a weight sustaining period for 4 weeks. Exact same thing with the 12-week group at the 1,250 kcals per day. Both groups did a 4-week weight stable period afterward. And you can see they never gained fat and muscle back. Like, both groups actually still lost muscle even after the stabilization period. And the group that crash dieted lost a significant amount of muscle. So this was averaged out across everybody, but you can see here they showed the differences between men and women. And women suffered even more. Okay, so women here, they lost more fat-free mass than men in the crash dieting approach, but also still did not retain a lot of that fat-free mass back even after the weight stable period. So both groups, men don't get a pass at all because they both lost a ton of muscle, but women tend to suffer more in this regard for sure. And then at the end of the dietary intervention, I mean, one group actually ended up gaining muscle at this point too. This low-calorie approach here, the men actually, when in isolation, men actually gained a little bit of muscle by the end of the weight stable period. So interesting call out. I wanted to draw attention to that study because many people only care about calories, but episode 1 was all about the muscle being the ultimate resilience organ, being your ultimate longevity organ. And also, just telling you from experience as a coach, when you're rapidly losing weight, but you're losing muscle along with it, then you don't really have much to show at the end of your weight loss period. You end up like a kind of skinny fat, for lack of a better phrase. One thing, because I used to coach a lot of bikini and figure and bodybuilding competitors, one thing that I would say in regards to losing muscle as you're dieting is you can't sculpt a pebble. Meaning, if you have no muscle on your body, then you don't really have the lines of definition you thought you would have after your weight loss period. So you want to do everything in your power to maintain muscle while you drop your body fat for health reasons, for longevity reasons, but also even for vanity and cosmetic reasons. Okay? So excellent paper calling that out. This is another paper here on downregulating metabolism. So if you're only counting calories, you're at a major risk of dropping body fat. But then if you're only counting calories and you're doing this type of crash dieting approach, you also have a downregulation of metabolism. So you can see here, you have this balanced dietary deficit. That's what BDD stood for. But then you, again, have a very low calorie diet. And that was actually at 500 calories again. And the balanced dietary deficit was at 1,200 calories. Now look at resting energy expenditure. For those who are unfamiliar, just think about that as metabolism. Just think about it basically like that. You've got your resting energy expenditure. Now these are measured in percentages, right? The crash dieting group by week 4, they're down 9.2% in their resting energy expenditure. Week 6, 17.3. Guys, imagine having a 17.3% reduction in your metabolic rate 6 weeks into the diet. That's significant. That is a serious change. 17.9 at week 10. And then at week 15, you got a 13.7 and then a minus 8.4 and then an 11.3. You might be thinking, well, hold on a second. Their peak worst was at 10, but then they got better at week 13. What happened? Well, this is a pretty cool paper where they actually built them back up. So you see here, the very low calorie diet group, they actually crashed down 500, and they did that from week 5 until week 12. And then when week 13 rolled around, they did increase 200 calories. Week 14, 200 more. Week 15, 100 more. Week 16, now they're on 1,200. Now they're on the same approach that the baseline deficit diet did. But you can kind of see here at week 10, they were still at their 500 calorie intake, and they were dang near 18% reduction in their metabolic rate. And by week 15, they're up to 1,000 calories now, which is double what they were at previously, by the way. I know that's still not a lot, but as far as your metabolism is concerned, doubling a caloric intake, especially in a starved state, is going to result in metabolic changes. But they're still in debt. They're still at 13.7. And then at week 17, they're all the way up to 1,200, so the same as the other group. But they're still at a minus 8.4% resting energy expenditure, whereas the other group is plus 1.8. Their metabolism's actually gone up by this point as opposed to down. And then by 24 weeks into this thing, you guys, that's a long, long time. They're still down 11.3%. Their metabolic rate's not recovered. So talk to anybody who's eaten 500 calories and then ask them how sustainable it was. And ask them also if they were able to maintain that physique within a few months after. It never, ever happens. Your psychology refuses it. Your emotional processing refuses it. The survival mechanisms of the body want to eat. The rebound is real. The rebound is real. And not only is the rebound real, but 24 weeks into this thing and their resting energy expenditure is still down 11.3%. This is powerful, okay? You cannot only count calories. You simply can't. Why? Because starving does not support vitality. Starving does not support, shocker, but starving will not support your vitality. Remember, will starving induce weight loss? Absolutely. If you want to just look at a number on a scale, but have no libido, poor sleep, stress, anxiety, terrible performance in the gym, reduced productivity at work, if none of these things matter to you, then 500 calories, knock yourself out. Do your thing. You're good to go, okay? But if you actually want a life of vitality, energy, no brain fog, being able to execute your list each and every single day, being able to execute your bucket list, all of these things, you're going to want a controlled approach. Because a controlled approach that's not just counting calories is what's going to actually allow you to improve your subjective experience of life through the diet, but then also for the rest of your life. Okay, that's calories. All you need is macros. Okay, this is the next level. Okay, this is where people okay, now I've figured out nutrition. Now I've got it. It wasn't just calories before. Now if I just count my macros within the calories, I am borderline genius. I'm a borderline genius. And again, I'm going to say things at an attempt at humor, even though I'm admittedly not funny, but I'm going to say things like that in an attempt at humor, but it's actually not to bash calories and macros at all. I calculate both of those myself. I also calculate both of those for all of my clients. Where I part ways that's the only thing I calculate. That is where I part ways very quickly and proudly, and we'll make a podcast about why I part ways at that juncture. Okay. So when you're doing the macros thing, when it comes to macros, there's a whole school of research behind this, and you really don't need this podcast for this. Although maybe I'll do a podcast only on carbohydrate metabolism, only on fat metabolism, only on protein metabolism in the future. That would be very valuable, but it's not going to be the focus for this one. What I want you to see here is you've got carbohydrates. They're the form of glucose metabolism. We've got our fast energy here. It's generally seen as not sustainable, even though there are a couple of pathways here, but that's the basic three on glycolysis, which is the process of breaking down carbs for energy. When it comes to beta oxidation, as an industry, they call it fat burning, but in biochemistry, it's beta oxidation. Key emphasis on oxa. You require oxygen in the mitochondria in order to be able to effectively convert these fatty acids into energy, which is why I say micronutrients like iron that support hemoglobin, which deliver oxygen around the body, definitely supports not just to be able to max, but of course fat burning as well, because oxygen is required at the mitochondria. It's also why things like anemia, the number one symptom of anemia is fatigue, and that's because you have a downregulation in energy production due to low iron or low folate B12 status, depending on the form of anemia. But we've got our beta oxidation here. This is typically seen as slow energy. This is your fat metabolism. This is very sustainable compared to carbohydrates, which, although they have a couple of pathways, are not globally seen as sustainable. Amino acid metabolism, despite popular belief, you can use protein as a source of energy. A lot of people don't think you can, but you absolutely can. The pathways do exist. You don't have to take my word for it. You can convert amino acids into energy. And it's one of the reasons why it's kind of silly sometimes when amino acid products, they will say 0 calories on the label, but they absolutely have calories in them because the amino acids can be used as a source of energy. So you ever see an amino acid label with 0 calories on it, it's because they're probably following a jurisdiction that says only calories, fats, and protein, only protein, fats, and carbs have known caloric sources as far as labels are concerned, fat being 9 calories per gram and carbs and protein being 4 calories per gram. But if you're putting single amino acids on there, I mean, if they're not recognizing that those also have calories, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. Nutrition is not a belief system. Nutrition is not a label. Amino acids absolutely have calories because they produce energy and provide energy in the freaking body for a lot of things. So amino acid metabolism, there are many pathways in order to get a lot of this stuff done. Why did I show you all three of these? I showed you the complicated process of glycolysis, the complicated process of beta oxidation, the complicated process of amino acid metabolism. Why? Well, because when we zoom in, you start to see a lot of this, okay? Carbohydrates, carbohydrate coming in the form of a piece of bread you ate. That first needs to get broken down into glucose. And then glucose gets broken down into pyruvate. But in order to convert pyruvate into acetyl-CoA so it can enter the citric acid cycle to eventually become ATP, well, you're going to need B5, B6, B12. You're going to need magnesium as well. You're going to need lipoic acid. Just look into the cycle right here. You got all of your B vitamins. You have magnesium. You have manganese. You have iron in many locations as well. This is what actually drives that energy production. Okay, you have calories, which are a form of energy, and then you have macronutrients, which are the substrates that make up that unit of energy. But this is what actually converts it to ATP in the body. If you have a limitation in micronutrient status, it doesn't matter how many Tony Robbins speeches you watch prior to your workout. You will not produce energy. Period. End of discussion. Like, this is a known pathway. If you're in the acetyl-CoA cycle and then you go from here to here and then you don't have enough magnesium to get through this process efficiently, what do you think happens? Do you think you can believe your way through that? Do you think you can will your way through that? It's not about grit. It's about biochemistry. And honestly, that's one of the things that actually makes me sad sometimes when I'm coming across people and they are putting their heart and soul into a program and they're not getting the return that they thought they were going to get on their investment. And it's because it's not have anything to do with the strength of their mentality, and has everything to do with the well-roundedness of their biochemistry. Okay, you can compare it to having a 5-lane highway of enthusiasm, but only a 3-lane highway of biochemistry. If you've got 5-lane highways of motivation to get a workout done, but only 3-lane highway pathway through biochemistry in order to produce energy for the workout, how much energy do you think you're going to produce for the workout? A 3-lane path. That's what's going to happen. Your mindset does not matter, and it ends up actually, degrading the discipline. And you start thinking, I just don't have the genetics to do this thing, or you start doubting your coach. And then check your biochemistry foundation first. You may not even have the foundation to reach your potential yet. Yeah, I actually call that dormant performance. If you're somebody who's already performing pretty well, and then you have a micronutrient insufficiency, well, then that's dormant performance. You're already performing at a certain level. And then when you add in a micronutrient, you're immediately going to perform better. Immediately. You have dormant performance waiting for you, but you can't access it yet because you don't have the biochemical foundation in order to do so. This actually shows up in sports a lot as well. Let's say you're an MMA fighter and you go in and you are consistently getting tired in rounds 2 and 3. You're getting fatigued. Man, you know what? I got to add more cardio to my training program. That is a dangerously bad thing to say in a weird way, because it's completely logical. It is very logical if you get tired in rounds 2 and 3 to say, I better do more cardio in my program. I better do more road work. I better do some more assault, and I got to do more cardio and become more conditioned. That will work so long as you didn't have a micronutrient insufficiency that was actually the reason why you had limited conditioning in your event. If you go do a bunch more cardio and then you're still getting tired in rounds 2 and 3, it's not your training program. Your blood work, your biochemistry, these things are what actually is like the checkbox. It's like, okay, you're cleared for exercise. And what I mean by that is, if you don't have a biochemistry foundation to support maximum adaptation from training, then you're just going into the gym and you're getting an unknown amount of adaptations from your training. That's kind of what it is. So I look at blood work a lot like raising the floor. I look at micronutrients a lot like raising the floor of your performance. If you have all of your micronutrients dialed in, then the floor of your performance is at the absolute top, which means you're sacrificing none of it to an unknown biochemical imbalance. So that actually basically in my mind clears you for exercise. It's like, all right, I've checked all the boxes biochemically, so now it's training. Now I just got to get after it with an intelligent training program, a discipline, and a good work ethic. Okay? And a lot of this micronutrient stuff will actually support your discipline and work ethic, because these things impact hormones and neurotransmitters in those pathways as well. But this is very important. You're looking at glycolysis and beta oxidation and amino acid metabolism. None of that stuff happens without micronutrients. Absolutely none of it. All right? And when it comes to these micronutrients, one micronutrient can do all the difference. Okay, you see, when I go back to this slide here, there's dozens of micronutrients on here, but one can change the game. I mean, this is an excellent study here of iron deficient female volleyball players. You have 2 groups. You put one on a placebo and you put the other one on iron supplementation. You measure what happens across just under 3 months. And then you see their hematological markers, which is blood. Their blood markers all improve in the iron group, but so did their actual outputs, okay? A strength increase in the clean and jerk, an improvement in the power clean, an improvement in total mean strength, so total average strength across the team. Like this is one micronutrient. Improving blood work, improving performance across a competitive season. One micronutrient. I know I said that a lot, but that needs to like land home with you. How many micronutrients do you think there are? Now think one is holding you back from making the team. One is holding you back from nailing that presentation at a job proposal. One of them is holding you back from killing a public speaking event. One of them is holding you back from those last 10 pounds that you want to lose so you look great at your vacation. This is micronutrient stuff, guys, and it can be one. It can be one. Here's another example of one micronutrient making all the difference. This was zinc. You take two zinc deficient take two zinc deficient subjects, not supplements, and you give them zinc, 26.4 milligrams for 4 months. Deficient subject number 1 increased their resting metabolic rate. Again, just think about that like metabolism, by 194 calories per day. That's significant. You're improving your metabolism by just under 200 calories per day. Guys, zinc deficient subject number 2 increased their metabolism by 992 calories per day. 992 calories per day. That's like 2 meals and a snack more that she could have had every single day to support her performance, to support her health, to support her recovery, to support her cognition, to do all of these things and actually not gain body fat. She's just rounding out the rest of her metabolism. And this is someone too, and again, this is where this is why I get kind of fired up about this stuff, and why I get fired up about people who don't do their due diligence on people before calling them lazy, right? Because this girl, imagine if she hired you for a fat loss diet and then she wasn't getting results. Do you understand what caloric deficit would be required of her in order to continue dropping weight with a near 1,000 calorie reduction in metabolic output due to zinc deficiency? Like, she would have to eat like a rabbit. She would have to eat like 2 leaves per day and then 1/3 leaf, but she can only lick the leaf. She can't actually eat the leaf. That would be her diet every single day. And she's gonna plateau there. You know, that would be a frustrating life where everybody thinks that you're secretly cheating on your diet when you're not. You're not. You're just low in zinc. To provide some practical examples here, this first girl, 194 calories. Well, she could add 48 more grams of protein per day. You guys, 48 more grams of protein in a zinc deficient female, especially an active one. It's a massive recovery, mental and physical recovery benefit, and appetite suppression benefit. 48 grams of protein is a lot. But when you do 992 calories, man, this girl could add a Big Mac and a medium fry. She got a Big Mac and a medium fry and still be under the resting metabolic rate increase that she had. So ridiculous example, but I couldn't help myself. Imagine having a Big Mac and a medium fry per day and being under your improved resting metabolic rate expenditure. It's not what I really recommend for a well-rounded micronutrient-based diet. If you're low in sodium, those would be great options, but any of the others, they won't be. But that's a fun example to show you how dramatic of a difference one micronutrient can make. Why does one micronutrient make such a massive change? Because physiology operates under the constraints of micronutrient availability. Physiology operates under the constraints of micronutrient availability. So when you are counting your calories, that's a phenomenal thing. When you are counting your macronutrients, that's a phenomenal thing. Recommend everybody do that. Everybody should do that. But the way in which those go to work for you will depend upon your micronutrient status. And the way in which you subjectively experience life will depend on your micronutrient status. Okay? You are just a meat machine that walks around under the constraints of micronutrient availability. That is all you are. Okay? That is it. Moving on to a very famous picture. Okay? This is actually human metabolism. This is human metabolism. This is all factors of human metabolism in one map. If you were to put this in a room, it would not fit. Okay, this is an enormous, and there's a few of these out there. I find them fascinating. And the reason why I find them fascinating is because you could zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom. You could do that 100 times, and you're going to see micronutrients. You're going to see micronutrients 100 times over. And you guys, look, don't look into my eyes. Look deep into the human metabolism map. Does that look like a belief system to you? Does that look like a belief system? It doesn't, okay? There's many people out there who are charismatic, who have amazing one-liners. I don't care anymore. Maybe I'm just getting old and grumpy. I don't care. There's human metabolism. That's it. That is it. That's freaking it. It's not a belief system, okay? Yeah. See, this is I get fired up about this stuff because it's so we're so there's this kind of stuff exists in textbook 30, 40 years ago. 30, 40 years ago. But there's people that make millions of dollars in today's market on a hope and a prayer, on an idea, on a physique, on a physique with a philosophy, but not with any pathways. But this already exists. This exists. So I'm asking you to join me in this revolution of bringing human metabolism back to the forefront of popularity so that we can end this stuff. This is how we actually create change. It's a big part of why I have this podcast, is to create meaningful change. Okay? There's a reason why I'm not charging for this. There's a reason why there's not paid ads here. There's a reason why I'm not doing anything with this. This is a Saturday. I'm recording this on a Saturday because I want to talk about this and I want to create change. Like, this stuff is out there. And we just have to move it forward together because I'm not going to be able to do it alone. I really want you guys to help me with this. And if we do our job, if we collectively as a community here do our job, then we will leave this industry in a better place than when we found it. And you can't ask for much more than that. This was a phenomenal paper. This is a great paper in 2023, and this was the impact of micronutrients on athletic performance. I highly recommend everybody check this paper out, and what a great graphic this is, right? General health, your water-soluble vitamins. Performance-based, your fat-soluble vitamins. Your injury and healing prevention, you've got A, D, E, and K. Your mental health, you've got a selection here. Immune function, metabolism, enzyme and hormones, growth and development. Yes, there is a lot of blending and like Venn diagrams that you could create here where there's a lot of crossover, but what a phenomenal representation of micronutrients for sports medicine. Does a great job at explaining all of these things, and it's something that has given me a lot of inspiration over the last couple of years because of the depth of information in performance. And I know that people look at me a lot when I say performance because I work with pro athletes and CEOs and actors and these kinds of people where performance means sport, performance means world class, performance means 1%er. But you guys, like when I'm just sitting here talking to you, and even when I'm talking to anybody, performance just simply means feel better mentally and physically. If you're performing better in your everyday life, you're mentally performing better, whether it's at your job or your sport or in the gym, or just keeping your attention span while you're reading a book or reading a new study, that is mental performance. If it's physical performance, it can be playing. Like I've got a 3-year-old, actually she just turned 4 yesterday, and keeping up with her is a demonstration of physical performance. It doesn't have to be a pro sport. Performance is just feeling better. So I would actually encourage you guys to alter the lens at which you view me sometimes, but alter the lens at which you review research papers at times that are dedicated to performance, and just understand that that's a performance means subjective improvement in life, period. All right. Cognitive function, I'm actually going to go through a handful here. There's a lot of subjective experiences of life that are dramatically improved by micronutrients. So I want to go through a handful of them, the ones in which I believe are most important to people, things like energy, things like hormones, things like cognition, things like sleep. I'm going to go through some examples here because those are the goals that come most my way and how and why micronutrients are important for them. When it comes to cognition, this is a pretty cool one. This one was actually done in kids. And could I find papers on micronutrients for cognition in adults? Of course I could. There is plenty out there in different ways, whether it's going to be for emotion, whether it's going to be for cognition, whether it's going to be for memory, if it's going to be for preventing cognitive decline as we age. These things are all out there. But I've chose this paper on purpose because we also need to feed our kids healthy food. Okay, if we want to create positive change in the world, we should probably not just do it with our generation, we should do it with the next as well. And when you're looking at this, it's a pretty cool one. 9 randomized controlled trials, 177 participants of kids between 9 and 11 years old. Vitamin B12 positively affected math, English, geography, science, and arts. Zinc positively affected English, geography, and arts. And iron positively affected math, English, geography, and arts. So we're looking at things here that I just want to Every kid needs nutrient density in their diet. Almost every kid is in school. Every kid would benefit from improved cognition. And this is something that I just don't want to gloss over. I think a lot of kids, I think kids' diets are arguably worse than they've ever been. And this type of research is right there in front of us. And this just came out in 2022. So I'm hoping this one catches steam and that we're able to give our kids nutrient-dense diets. I know I pay a lot of attention to the dietary intake in this household, and I'm very proud of doing that, and I want to recommend other people do it as well. Moving forward in cognition for micronutrients, just to add in a little hint for adults here too, so it's not just kids in the world of cognition. Just look at neurons. If you guys want me to bring up single papers on this, we're going to talk for a century. When you just look at diagrams like this, great one from the Linus Pauling Institute, homocysteine metabolism, something that has been linked with cognitive decline, but folate, B12, and B6, riboflavin, choline, niacin, helping to improve homocysteine metabolism and regulate it so we don't have those same oxidative stress effects. Energy metabolism for neurons, neuronal growth, vitamin D for energy metabolism. We're talking brain energy metabolism. We're talking neurons and synapses communicating with one another. Neurotransmitter binding with B6, neurotransmitter synthesis, B vitamins, vitamin C, zinc, choline. You guys get the idea here. Neurons don't work unless you have micronutrient availability. Now, neurons are everywhere in the body. I mean, they're everywhere doing everything, essentially. But specific in the world of cognition, and in the world of looking at synaptic activity and neurotransmitter synthesis and neurotransmitter binding and homocysteine metabolism, if you want a well-performing brain and a well-protected brain, you're going to want a nutrient-dense diet. When it comes to hormonal function, this is an awesome paper. So this is by Zamir and in 2021. And this paper was on the manipulations of dietary intake and what effect that has on testosterone concentrations in the body. And they looked at total caloric intake, they looked at macronutrient distribution, and they looked at micronutrient status. Okay, and this is a great graphic directly from that paper. Shout out to all the people whose papers I put out on these shows. I love researchers, and I hope that all of them get more attention and props for what they do. So you're always going to hear me shout out the names for these things, you guys, because I don't want to stand here and take the credit. I read their work, and now I'm just delivering it to you. Okay, but you're looking at a graphic like this: vitamin D, magnesium, zinc status, substrate use, getting these things in here. This is an awesome paper. And although this graphic doesn't show it, it basically showed the idea that calories, no matter what your macronutrient distribution, lowers testosterone in males and females. When it comes to healthy fat, very, very low fat approaches to testosterone, very low fat approaches to diet, reduce testosterone in men and women. So a moderate intake of fat is recommended. But then the strongest signals for micronutrient status, I don't know if I actually put it on here. This is a piece of that paper, but I'll just tell you because I've read it and I really memorized it. The strongest signals from that paper were zinc, vitamin D, and magnesium. Those were the strongest ones. So like when you're taking that advice from me, you think, okay, where do my supplements cover that? Where does my diet cover that? Hey, when was the last time I looked at my zinc, magnesium, and vitamin D and a blood status? You start to really pull this stuff. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. All the studies I'm showing in here are a mix of both as well. Testosterone's not just a male and female thing, and certainly neither is micronutrient status. But I'm going to give you a lot of recommendations at the end, but start tying these things together in your own life so you get maximum value from this. So we've gone over cognition and hormones. How about metabolic health? Okay. Metabolic health. Well, this was pretty cool. And I want to call this out. So this paper, these first two things I'm going to talk about did not reach statistical significance. Okay. They just trended in a way that I think is cool. All right. So what happened here? We've got obese participants. We've got two groups. We basically got a group that's supplementing with zinc and selenium while they're dieting. And then we got a group that's not doing that. This was 8 weeks. And although it was not significant, I want to point that out, there was greater losses in body fat in the group that was supplementing. And although, again, not statistically significant, there were greater gains in muscle mass. So you can look at that over here, actually. You could see muscle mass in the people who were actually supplementing improved. Okay, so the supplementation group is this column here. At worst, you gained muscle at the end of the diet. Whereas at worst, you either gained no muscle or lost muscle at the end of the diet if you were placebo. Now, this also showed in total fat-free mass, so we're taking into consideration bones and things like that. But then you're looking at body fat here too. At worst, you lost more body fat than the people who did not. Okay, or at best, rather, which is a good thing. So essentially, these things did not reach statistical significance, and I will call that out. And if I don't call that out sometimes, guys, I hope that I'm not here to be the right one. I want what is right to come from this podcast. So I want to call out things like this when it's not significant. And if I'm ever wrong on something like that, I appreciate the correction. Okay, but these ones were not significant, but they trended in a great way. So I wanted to point that out, but this is the same paper, okay? This next one is the same paper, and it did reach statistical significance. How? Metabolic rate, okay? Look at the difference look at that delta in metabolic rate. We got 441 in the supplementation group and negative 38 in the group that wasn't. This is selenium and zinc supplementation, two things very critical to thyroid, which are very critical to metabolic adaptation and overall metabolism due to thyroid's effect, specifically T3 on metabolic rate. So although we didn't reach statistical significance with fat loss and muscle gain, it trended in the right direction. And then we did reach statistical significance in overall metabolism, which is phenomenal. Still a great finding to having just 2 extra micronutrients in the diet, let alone everything else. Why does it matter here? Well, this is another really cool paper. I'd never seen one like this before. This is by Martins in 2021, and you're looking at a graph that's a little bit confusing. But what happened in this paper was they were able to demonstrate for each 10 calorie per day increase in metabolic adaptation, the time to reach your weight loss goal increased by a day. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, everybody's heard of, if we lose weight too fast, then our metabolism's going to slow down because it's trying to go into preservation mode and keep fat on the body. That is a very simplistic way to explain something that is very true. There's something called adaptive thermogenesis, where things such as T3, testosterone, estrogen, insulin, leptin, there are a lot of hormonal changes that actually affect the overall metabolic output of the body on a day-to-day basis. And then when you crash diet or lose too much weight too soon, these things will react pretty quickly and go into conservation mode to reduce your metabolic burning per day in an effort to try and keep body fat on the body for a longer period of time. Okay, because that's what it's deeming is healthy in a survival sense from an evolutionary biology perspective. What this paper was able to tease out is pretty cool. For every 10 calorie increase in adaptation, the time to reach your goal increased by a day. So, for example, if you have 100 calorie adaptive response to your diet, then it's going to take 10 more days to reach your weight loss goal. Okay. That'll vary from person to person, of course, but a good evidence-based way to look at the context behind adaptive thermogenesis and why we want to do things like this, okay? Why we want to protect our metabolism for as long as we can. It's not just for your subjective experience of life, but that would have been reason enough, but it's also just to shorten the time it takes to reach your goals, okay? And increase the likelihood that you're going to be able to maintain those goals because you're going to be a happier and healthier person, okay? Sleep quality, another big one that micronutrients impact. Okay, magnesium status, you probably saw this one coming from a mile away. 155 individuals reporting poor sleep. You put them in 2 groups. You give one group magnesium bisglycinate. You wait 4 weeks and the insomnia score index unsurprisingly improves. Okay, magnesium is pretty popular industry-wide for helping people sleep, helping people calm down, helping with a lot of things, okay? There are many enzymatic reactions that magnesium is involved in. And this is one that just affects one of the largest pain points that come my way as a coach. I don't know about how many coaches are listening to me right now, but there's a lot of people that don't sleep well. And then there's a lot of people that sleep better once you improve their magnesium status. When you look at the RBC mag status in a blood report and then you get a before and after improvement and you're tracking sleep at the same time, people do sleep better when they actually improve their magnesium status with a high quality magnesium product or a high quality dietary intake from food of magnesium. This is also kind of a weird graph to look at, but what you're essentially looking at is the change in the insomnia sleep index score. So if you're placebo, your change in score is going to be pretty standard because you're not on a placebo, you're not doing anything. But when you're looking at the dietary magnesium intake from individuals, their ISI actually improves a lot. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As you climb up this ladder, more dietary magnesium intake is coming in. So you're seeing this positive correlation with more magnesium coming in the body, resulting in better subjective ISI scores. All right, so magnesium, evidence-based, really good for sleep, but it doesn't just stand alone. Magnesium is usually one that people talk about when it comes to sleep. But just to quote this paper directly, micronutrient status has also been linked to sleep duration, with sleep duration positively associated with iron, zinc, and magnesium levels, and negatively associated with copper, potassium, and B12 levels. So the answer in most things in biology is don't go extreme in one thing. You want to go balanced across all things. All right. I'm pulling out certain studies to make certain points, but my recommendations will actually be very balanced and very well-rounded in the end. And that's just how biology loves to operate. Biology doesn't like extremes. It loves balance. Physiology doesn't like to be forced. Physiology likes to be coaxed. Okay. If you force the body, it's going to react. But if you coax the body, it will positively respond. Energy production. Okay. This is another big one. We've gone over cognition, sleep, hormone status, metabolic health, things people really care about. And people kind of just stop at the calorie and macro thing. How about energy? Everybody wants more energy per day. Well, once again, energy requires micronutrients. And when you give people just a B complex, their energy output improves. And it's for the same reasons why I showed you in the diagram previously, discussing or explaining rather all of the metabolic pathways of amino acid metabolism, beta oxidation, as well as carbohydrate metabolism. It's not just giving the body, and this is an example of improved outputs without more carbs. Right? This is a sports supplement, which is really just a B complex and a couple of amino acids. And you're just improving energy-specific outputs in these people, even though it's not a carbohydrate, which is typically seen in sports products. You also see improvements, of course, in outputs as well with electrolytes. Another phenomenal example of micronutrient status improving your ability to actually have energy because it improves the electrolyte concentrations of the muscle that support output. Okay? Moving on. Okay? I went through the pain points that most people suffer with or want more of. But there, of course, you saw that human metabolism chart. It doesn't matter what your pain point is, micronutrient status is going to support your life, period. What are my recommendations here? Well, my recommendations are a lot more than just take a multivitamin. Do I recommend taking a multivitamin? Yeah, for sure. If you were stranded on an island and you could only take one supplement with you. By the way, I hate these examples. It's got like I got asked this a lot in podcasts. Like if you could only do one exercise, if you could only take one supplement. That's like asking someone, "Hey man, if you could only brush one teeth before you go to bed, what would it be? If you could only brush one tooth when you woke up, what would it be?" Like, no one's going to do that. No one's going to brush one tooth. No one's going to do that. So when everyone says if you had to do one thing, I hate that question. But now I'm going to provide an example. An example is different than a question. I am choosing this path. If I had to take one supplement to a stranded island, it would be a multivitamin. That's what it would be. And supporting the pathways of metabolism that are going to help me get off that island. Okay, that's the one that I would take. But I believe it is prudent of me to provide more recommendations than just take a multivitamin because there are more recommendations and more context than that. Before we get into it, what is a micronutrient? Never really defined it, so how are we going to recommend things for it? Well, a lot of people think polyphenols, zoonutrients, phytonutrients, flavonoids, all these other things, they are micronutrients. No, they're not. Micronutrients are vitamins and minerals. And there's families in there. Right? You've got your water-soluble and your fat-soluble vitamins. You've got your essential minerals and you've got your trace minerals. There are families within those things, but these are the micronutrients. Now, are those other things important and cool? Yeah. I'm going to do future episodes probably on all that stuff. But today, let's hang out in the micronutrient world. And funny enough, when you have excellent recommendations for micronutrients, you cover these boxes anyways, but they're worthy of their own discussion, so we'll talk about them in the future. The three gaps that I see when looking at micronutrient status, I've researched the crap out of this stuff because I'm really passionate about micronutrient status, and I can recite any vitamin mineral study that goes back decades. I'm kind of a crazy person that way. And after looking at all this stuff, I really see three large gaps when it comes to people to this day not getting adequate intake. First of all, it's simply the intake gap. What's hitting your plate, right? Kind of obvious, but I'll provide you more perspective on that. Secondly, the absorption and transport gap, because your gastrointestinal integrity and your competitors and enhancers impact things, right? You aren't what you eat. You only are what you eat and actually absorb. If you have competitors or things impacting absorption or a poor digestive tract, then what you eat isn't what you are. You only are what you actually absorb. If you eat it, but you have poor absorption and uptake, then it's nothing more than expensive feces. Moving on to number 3, the utilization gap. Okay, so this is endocrine status, inflammation, training phase demand. These things will all turn those dials of unique optimization to your physiology. That utilization is very, very much down to you. They all are, but the utilization is like a special one. So those are your 3 gaps. You have your intake gap, your absorption and transport gap, and your utilization gap. If this is like a stool, by the way, it's like a tripod. When you're looking at micronutrient status of the body, what happens to a tripod if you knock one of the legs out? The whole thing collapses. Okay? A tripod will not stand if you knock one leg out. That's exactly what this is like when it comes to micronutrient status. If you knock one of these out, then you're not going to be optimal. Will you be sufficient? Yes. Okay? You will be sufficient. Okay? You might not even be that symptomatic. But will you be your best self? No. Intake. So this is a pretty cool one. This is a paper, and I'm hoping that you can see this table right now, even though it's a little small, but I wanted to include the whole thing. What you're essentially looking at is men and women and their percentage of micronutrient intake. And you're looking at that percentage of intake, whether just from their diet or including dietary supplements or also including sports nutrition products. Okay, so we've got basically 3 groups. We've got the group on no dietary supplements or sports nutrition products. And then we have the group only on dietary supplements. And then we have the group only on sports nutrition products. And then we have a group on dietary supplements and sports nutrition products. So excellent scope of people here. And we've got this in men and women, which is pretty cool. And I wanted to show you some things, like important things. So people not on sports nutrition supplements or dietary supplements, 100% of them did not meet the daily vitamin D. 100% of the people in this study did not meet their recommended daily vitamin D. And by the way, that's for men and women. It's for both. Now, where things get interesting is even if you're on a dietary supplement, 43% did not get their vitamin D intake in. And if you're on a dietary supplement and sports nutrition products, still 28% didn't get enough in. Guys, this is huge. This is huge. And RIE, for those unfamiliar, that's vitamin A status, but just in European terminology. But you're looking at, and you guys, there's a lot of numbers popping up here. Of course, the group taking nothing, but this is kind of a maybe a different way to view it. This group is not on supplements or sports nutrition products and are only eating their diet. There's a lot of people in the world that do that. Or maybe they're having one crap multivitamin that they're not absorbing anyways. They're probably hanging out here where there's a number on basically every single micronutrient that they're not getting in, whether you're male or female. But then you see people who are on dietary supplements, you're still seeing numbers pop. And the people on sports nutrition products, you're seeing more numbers pop. And then even the people taking both, they still have numbers pop. So like when someone says, this is where I kind of part ways, right? When someone just says, take a multivitamin. Man, yeah, is it better than nothing? Of course, dude. Is it way better than nothing? Yeah, I'm still going to agree with you all the way to that point. You look at papers like this, and you miss the mark when it comes to that, okay? Because even those taking supplements were missing suggested micronutrient intake needs. And you guys, I want to point this out. This was, I'll point this out here, right? This is your percentage of your basic intake. You guys, your adequate intake, your AI, That's what's happening here. This isn't like over like reaching optimal status and supporting training, the unique training volume that you're in. This is basic stuff, basic stuff. So a lot of people are just simply not even close. Now that we know that people, even on supplements, lots of times don't get enough, and the populations too, the people taking supplements or even sports nutrition supplements, we're missing a lot. So like these are in populations who should have it down, right? We know that they're pretty low. So the next thing that I want to bring to you is variety matters. Variety really matters. There's a lot of people, and I actually saw a paper, don't quote me on this one, but I saw a paper somewhere that said the average person only eats from 11 foods on average per week. 11 foods per week. And I think about that, and that's probably pretty close. A lot of people get kind of locked into their routines, whether good or bad. They kind of like the same things forever. And if it's not 11, but I'm 99% sure that paper said that. If it's not 11, even if it's 15, right? It's still not a lot, and it starts to get even more believable that people hang out in that world. I have tons of different foods every week because I have been there. There's Facebook posts from me in 2013 talking about food rotation for this specific purpose. Variety matters, and you just have to look at labels. You don't have to like. This is an excellent paper from Goncalves in 2023, but when you look at these, like you just see the huge difference. This was in mineral status of raw nuts, okay? And you look at, say, magnesium in an almond at 275 milligrams per 100 grams. And then you look down at chestnut and it's 30. We're talking a multiple fold difference. You're looking at calcium status, 248 in almonds. Then you go down to pine nuts and they're at 16. A huge difference. So are either of them bad? No. Are either of them superior? No. That is never the case. What is the intention is to rotate. Everything has its own distribution of amino acids and fatty acids and minerals and vitamins. And when you have a rotary of these things, then you're going to have a more well-rounded intake of them. Now, this was minerals for these raw nuts. When you look at vitamins, you see the same thing. This is a very cool paper, right? Or you look at vitamin C. So previously, right, the almond destroyed chestnut in magnesium status, but then chestnut's like slipping that jab and coming back with a right cross here, right? Because 40 milligrams per 100 grams of chestnuts for vitamin C status compared to almonds 3.6. And not even close for vitamin C. But this is across the board. You just get huge difference. Like look at pistachios, 415 compared to 0.06 for vitamin A. Like rotation is really important for vitamins and minerals, you guys. And this is I'm using raw nuts to make a point, but this is nuts, fruits, vegetables, meats, grains. It's all of it. And also it's not just for micronutrients. I know I said I wouldn't talk about these other things in this episode, but I couldn't help myself with this one. This is polyphenols. Polyphenols are really important for overall health. And look at the difference, say, between a chokeberry and a strawberry. And then also not just in total polyphenol content, but there's different types of polyphenols, right? You have your flavonols, you have phenolic acids, you have anthocyanins, you have all of these things. But look at the color bars. Like there's not only different total amounts, but there's actually different types within them. So in the same way that you think, I got to mix my foods up for well-rounded water-soluble and fat-soluble vitamins, essential minerals, and trace minerals, you also have to do that for your zoonutrients, for your phytonutrients, for your polyphenols, for all of these things, for all of it. When you rotate, you become a much more resilient being because your body it's like when your biochemistry, if it wants to do anything, it's right there. It wants to do anything, it's right there. It's like it just has the nutrients and availability to do anything it wants at any time. And that's really how you want to feel in life. So my first recommendation, if you didn't see it coming, for intake is rotation. But my recommendation here is you've got your daily base 3 and then your weekly 7-2-1. This is what I want you to remember. Your daily base 3 and then your weekly 7-2-1. What are your daily base 3? get your greens in, get your starches in, and then get your calcium source. So this is going to look like green status is going to get you magnesium, folate, K, which K is potassium. Then your vitamin K, your starches with fiber. This is where we're getting more potassium, but also our magnesium and iron and our fiber status and our calcium source. We can support gut health a lot with this because yogurt and kefir are great for this, but we're getting our K2, calcium. We're really, these things, as far as intake requirement and excretion and utilization goes, that's really your daily base 3. From a weekly perspective, I want you to have 7 colors. So hit a different color of something every single day. You should go across 7 colors throughout the week. And that's when you're going to start to get the micronutrient distribution, but that's also when you're going to start to get the carotenoids, the polyphenols. You're going to get these different things really, really when you're mixing up those colors. So 7-2-1, 7 different colors, 2 from the sea and 1 organ. Some of you might be cringing at that organ. I don't blame you. A lot of people hate that. In the topic of micronutrients, organs are huge. They're huge. But if you don't like organs, you can go just make sure you get egg yolks in, okay, to make up some of those gaps there. But you've got your 7 colors, your 2 from the sea, and your organ, and then your daily base 3. If you do those, your week can look a little something like this. Hey, Monday to Sunday, you're covering all of your bases here, all the bases. And that pretty much makes you indestructible. It really does. You've got oxygen delivery, thyroid, and immunity. You've got your brain recovery and thyroid. You have sleep, muscle support, blood pressure, methylation, antioxidant signaling. It really doesn't matter. I use these examples because we've discussed a handful of them on here, and I think others are very important for living a great life. But this weekly schedule, it just covers all your bases, so you don't look like some of those people in the study that are on supplements, dietary supplements, and on sports supplements and still missing the gaps. This is where stuff like this comes in to fill in all of those gaps, but then fill in the gaps that other people aren't even measuring, like flavonoids and polyphenols, phytonutrients, and all those things. You're going to be on a different level, and I'm telling you, you're going to feel on a different level. Micronutrients determine how you feel. This rotation thing matters a lot, okay? Imagine seeing a cool study on one thing and then making sure you rotate dozens of those per week. You're getting this one thing from here, another thing from there, another thing from there. It's something that spirals upward with success. Okay. That is number 1. Your recommendation for is rotation. Now, when it comes to absorption and integrity, this stuff really matters too, right? The gap number 1 is what's hitting your plate. Gap number 2 is absorption and gut integrity. But bacteria, and this is something I want to do future episodes on as well, microorganisms actually regulate the level of micronutrients, both by intervening in the biosynthetic processes and by modulating their absorption. So bacteria actually help you uptake micronutrient status better than you otherwise would, but it also helps you decrease micronutrient uptake status if your body deems it does not want it at that time. But you guys, bacteria can actually also produce micronutrients. A lot of people don't know that. So through absorption, through intelligently blocking absorption, and through also producing their own, bacteria are this amazing, intelligent thing that I've got so much that I want to talk to you about. But basically, we are a hotel for things that live in us that aren't even us, which is kind of cool, in a weird, gross way, actually. If you think weird, gross things are cool, then it's kind of cool, and we'll be friends. But we're basically a hotel for billions and billions and billions of bacteria, and they have their own mind and they make their own decisions, but their decisions are tied to us. They want the host to actually survive because that's where they get their diet. That is where they live. They're actually on our team in so many ways, and in many ways we don't even know yet, which is cool. But they can support absorption and block absorption in an intelligent way. They can create their own micronutrients, but they also protect us in such cool ways. This is a paper that I don't have on here, but I'll tell you as a fun sidebar. It's actually been demonstrated that if you smell dead, rotting flesh, so if that's around you, if you smell dead, rotting flesh, your body will actually start hiding iron in the body. The reason why it does that is iron is a force multiplier for bacteria. Bacteria, you can imagine in a super simplistic way, imagine bacteria eating iron and then being able to multiply and replicate their colonies faster than ever. When you give iron access to bacteria, and it is a pathogenic bacteria, that bacteria is going to use that iron to really ramp up production and start becoming a real bacterial overgrowth infection problem, and it's a real issue. So the cool thing that's been demonstrated is if you can smell dead flesh around you, your body already starts hiding iron. Why? In case the weird thing happens where you want to eat some of that dead flesh, or you come into contact with some of that dead flesh. That dead flesh smells like pathogenic bacteria. So then your body starts to hide, or your bacteria rather, your body and bacteria with the bacteria's support starts hiding iron, so that in case you come across or ingest this awful meat with pathogenic bacteria on it, it's going to be exposed to less iron than it otherwise would have, giving you a better chance at getting through the event. Okay? Cool little sidebar, or at least I think it's cool, right? But a big thing that's going on with bacterial status and regulating vitamins and minerals in the body. Gut inflammation. This is IBD patients, and you could just see vitamin A, folate, B12, vitamin D, calcium. If you have IBD, this is really just an extreme example to show that if your gut integrity is under distress, then your uptake of nutrients is poor. Again, you aren't what you eat. You only are what you eat and actually absorb. Your nutrient-dense diet does not mean anything if you do not have the gut health to absorb it. Okay? Extreme example of this, but this happens on a subclinical level as well. Competitors, you could just see here the classic battles between iron and calcium and zinc and what happens with absorption and uptake in the body. There are competitors. The copper zinc is another classic battle you'll see in papers as well. You see another paper here too, which is the opposite. Vitamin C actually really helps iron uptake. You can see on this graph here, the ascorbic to iron ratio. The more vitamin C you're adding to these iron people, and that's certainly within the same meal, vitamin C helps you uptake iron a lot more effectively. So although some things compete for absorption, there's other things that actually really help each other, and they all need to be taken into consideration with that gap number 2, absorption and competitors. And beyond this, vitamin C actually helps iron uptake, and iron uptake actually improves hemoglobin status of the body. And hemoglobin status improves oxygen delivery, which supports energy, which supports VO2 max, which supports endurance, which supports a lot of things. So you can think a lot of ways like we aren't looking at things in isolation. It's like the opposite of what I want to do with this talk. When I bring up something like vitamin C, I want you to know that this isn't just in isolation. Everything is connected to everything. There is checks and balances all across the body, positively and negatively. And you think about vitamin C status, and you can kind of forget that it helps uptake iron. And now that you've uptake iron, you can support hemoglobin. And now that you can support hemoglobin, you can support energy and endurance of VO2 max. And this isn't my opinion. This isn't just plausible physiologic theory and pathways. This has been demonstrated. This is a forest plot showing the effect of vitamin C on hemoglobin status, period. So you get massive effects from these things where one micronutrient can be all the thing that you need. So what's recommendation 2? Is to support your gut health, right? For gap number 1 was the what's hitting your plate, and we know we need to rotate a lot. We're going to follow the daily base 3 and the weekly 7-2-1. But with the intake and absorption gap, we really need to support gut health by eating fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, kimchi, consuming garlic, onions, leeks, asparagus, and bananas for our prebiotics. Get some glutamine in there, stay hydrated, and prioritize sleep and stress management. There are many people who take a lot of supplements for gut health and don't prioritize stress and sleep, and you're basically spinning your tires in the mud. Although stress and sleep don't seem connected to the gut, they're your 2 most powerful levers for gut health. Take that to the bank, okay? That those 2 have to be sorted out for you to have success in the gut health world. So that's number 2. These 5 recommendations for gut health, we'll tease those out bigger in future podcasts, but you knock these 5 out, you're going to have a happy gut. You really will. In the world of utilization, Okay, we've gone over the first two gaps. The third gap was the utilization. Now, everybody's utilization is different. This is a great paper from Pickering in 2020, basically going over the stress cycle to where if somebody is stressed out, well, then they're going to actually deplete their magnesium. But the very status of low magnesium is a stressful state of the body, which then creates another stress response. So what basically happens, this is a great figure from that paper, but what basically happens is when you're stressed, you actually use magnesium to produce the stress response. But if you do that too often, well, then you've used a lot of magnesium and now you're magnesium insufficient. But being magnesium insufficient is physiologically stressful, which then creates another stress response. So then you end up in this downward spiral that you really can't get out of until you fix magnesium status. So this is something that's actually very critical to correct, because that will just continue going down in a downward spiral, and you will become a lot more susceptible to stressful events. You will be a lot less resilient to stressful events as well, because you simply don't have the biochemistry to deal with them. Utilization, on top of this, in the magnesium world, it's not just about stress and availability, but you look at athletes as well. Strenuous exercise apparent increases primary and sweat losses that may increase magnesium requirements by 10 to 20%. Put another way, if you're an active individual doing hard training, you require 10 to 20% more magnesium than someone else. Okay? This is like the difference between those RDAs and the adequate intakes, depending on if you are a highly active person, well, then more output requires more input. Okay, through muscle contraction and through sweat, active people can require up to 20% more magnesium. That's not a small number. This is a really, really, really big number, especially if you're starting in the hole. Furthermore, anti-nutrients actually matter. Anti-nutrients is something that can sound a little woo-woo, like what's anti-nutrient? That sounds like marketing. It's really not. So I'm just going to quote the research directly so that you know exactly where to learn more about this. The addition of phytic acid lowered fractional apparent magnesium absorption from 32.5% to 13%, and from 32% to 24%. The inhibiting effect of phytic acid was dose dependent. What does that mean? Well, they gave people a meal that contained magnesium, and then in one meal they gave them a higher amount of phytic acid, and then in another meal they gave them a lower amount of phytic acid, but still gave them phytic acid. Phytic acid reduced magnesium absorption. Huge. It reduced magnesium absorption by up to 50% comparing one to another. Guys, that difference is massive, and it's not fake. And actually, I'll show you this graph here too from the paper directly. So you're looking at test meal A and you're looking at test meal B. This is absorbing magnesium, and this is the group test meal A was consuming the large amount of phytic acid, and this test meal B was consuming the smaller amount of phytic acid. So why does this graph look like this? Because this is your absorption. So when you consumed a large amount of phytic acid, you absorbed very little magnesium status. When you consumed some phytic acid, but not the large dose, you actually were able to absorb more. So it was a dose-dependent effect. And I'll actually just go back here and read the conclusion as well. The results show that fractional magnesium absorption from wheat bread, sorry, my eyes can't really see this, significantly impaired the addition of phytic acid at a dose-dependent manner at amounts similar to those naturally present in wholemeal and brown bread. So when we're looking at absorption status in the body and utilization, anti-nutrients are actually relevant, and that's why I kind of like blood work. It's like the ultimate trump card. You can just use it to see where somebody's at and adjust accordingly. It takes a lot of the complication out of this, but I digress. Anti-nutrients, and this is just one example of which there are many. Number 3, you got to individualize. Okay, so that based on this magnesium stress cycle, based on the activity training volume phase and what that can do to micronutrient status, based on anti-nutrients and your cultural or preferred food intakes, you have to individualize this thing. You have to individualize it. Okay, even if you do the recommendation 1 of my rotation rules and recommendation 2 of all the gut support stuff, you still need to individualize from there because things do matter. So what I recommend is do your homework on what unique demands that you encounter and get your blood work done, because it's very difficult to begin a micronutrient journey if you don't know where you're currently at and you don't know where you want to be. Where you're currently at may already be good. It also may not. Where you want to be is actually going to be dependent upon what outcome that you want. Okay, these things are measured through blood and they're very effectively done that way. So they kind of just clear the guesswork and allow you to do the homework that's actually necessary for you. Beyond this, find ways to support optimal hormonal and inflammatory balance, because I would be lying to you if I said things like stress didn't matter. Sleep didn't matter. These things 100% matter. And although micronutrients are the underpinning of all things physiology, we still need to have a very healthy lifestyle to maximize that. You think about micronutrients are actually realized to their full potential through the decisions that you make in your everyday life. To finish this one off, last episode, we talked about in resilience and kind of finished it with the fat-free mass index and how actually muscle isn't just a resiliency organ, but it's something that can be deeply connected to longevity. Micronutrients are the exact same type of thing, and you actually can do that through muscle. We talk so much about how muscle and strength can help support longevity and cognition and physical ability as we age through so many different mechanisms. But micronutrients are also what allow the muscle to be able to do any of those things. Okay, muscle mass has consistent findings across studies highlighting potential roles for antioxidants, nutrients, and B vitamins and magnesium in the prevention of sarcopenia. And that's because when you look at things like muscle protein synthesis, it's the same as looking at any of those other human metabolism pathways. You need certain micronutrients to support muscle protein synthesis and to fight muscle protein breakdown. And it's no surprise to me that you're going to have a micronutrient signature that supports the prevention of sarcopenia because the body is simply functioning better. And that's also what you see in this literature. All right, this is a really cool paper and the title is Associations of Micronutrient Dietary Patterns with Sarcopenia Among U.S. Adults, a Population-Based Study. Now, this podcast is making me realize that I might need glasses, but I'll read the conclusion here. Nutritional patterns based on micronutrient intake were significantly related to sarcopenia, indicating that micronutrients interact well with each other while exerting their individual functions, and that micronutrient dietary patterns may provide promising strategies for preventing the loss of muscle mass, with further prospective studies warranted in the future. So this was just a really cool paper pointing out how different patterns of micronutrients help offset sarcopenia. But again, when you understand human metabolism, when you understand biochemistry, when you understand pathways, these things, we love to see them observed. We love to see them demonstrated. We love to see how they turn out in real world data. But when you understand biochemistry, a lot of this stuff actually just makes sense. A lot of it really, really, really just makes sense. Another thing that makes a lot of sense is when you look at 22 studies looking at iron status in the body, and you look at how iron status actually improves performance through specifically improving VO2 max. And then you look at all of the data connecting VO2 max to longevity that everybody is talking about these days. You guys, this VO2 max maximization, it doesn't happen without optimal micronutrient status. It doesn't happen. There's hours and hours and hours and hours of podcasts out there. There's podcasts out there just on VO2 for longevity with no mention of hemoglobin, with no mention of iron. They just talk about VO2 max and get into zone 2 and that kind of stuff. All right. If you're biochemically cleared, right? If you pass the clearance test, you are now cleared to exercise. You can do that. Yeah. All that stuff is wildly important. I don't want to discount it. I'm not here to discount it, but I also don't want to discount micronutrient intake. The only reason you have a VO2 max, the only reason you have oxygen delivery, the only reason the muscles are doing those things is because the micronutrients are actually allowing you to be able to do those things. Period. We operate under the strict constraint of what micronutrients are available to us. I don't care if it's today or your longevity. I don't care if you're a strongman athlete or an endurance athlete or a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad or a CEO. I don't care what it is. If you're working with me, we're gonna get your micronutrients rounded out, because it's going to be very difficult for you to be the best version of yourself anytime. If you have a single gap, missed, then you will not live your best life. High performance health isn't a belief system. It's chemistry. Fix the micronutrients and your scoreboard's going to start moving. Thanks for watching.